Welcome to Insight Out, an NOV podcast where we tell the story of our industry through experience of leaders in energy and business. I'm your host, Assaad Mohanna. I'm the Director of Business Strategy here at NOV, and I am glad you are joining us. Offshore activity has been, for years, an important pillar of the world's energy landscape. The last decade has seen the offshore world see major changes, whether due to the unconventional land drilling and production activity or from the onset of the pandemic. Today, we're joined by a very special guest, Senior Vice President at the American Bureau of Shipping, Matt Tremblay. Matt, welcome to Insight Out.
Thanks, Assaad. Great to see you.
It is great to see you too, Matt, and I'm really looking forward to our conversation today. I would like to hear from you a little bit about what does ABS, or the American Bureau of Shipping, do?
Sure. Well, ABS is actually a not-for-profit company, and we're a mission-driven organization. And the mission of ABS is to promote the security of life and property and preserving the natural environment in the marine field. So ABS does that through a global network of surveyors and engineers spread in our offices around the world. We write and publish standards for safety in the marine and offshore environment, whether that's the structural capability of a floating asset or details into the operations of the electrical control system for an FPSO topside. And we've got a network of about 2,500 people spread throughout the world, and working together with the marine industry as essentially a self-regulator.
That sounds like a lot of work and a lot of responsibility in the offshore space. And it sounds like you're not only involved in the early stages of commissioning an asset, but also throughout its lifetime, right?
Sure. Well, the class process has a couple of stages. During the design and construction, we've got a role in verifying that design and construction is in accordance with the applicable safety requirements, whether they're the ABS requirements, or many times we actually operate as the recognized organization on behalf of a flag state or a coastal state, verifying requirements on their behalf as well. But that role doesn't stop at the end of the design and construction phase. The role of classification is a continuous life cycle role where we do an annual inspection for all the vessels that are registered with ABS class, and that includes both verifying the condition of the asset annually, but the requirements and what degree to which we go into detail and look at the condition of the asset is actually on a 5-year cycle, where once in 5 years that we've seen every aspect of the vessel, make sure that it's operating and maintained in accordance with all the applicable requirements.
Yeah, and I got to say that's a pretty important topic. Just as we're seeing, there's probably several hundred platforms out there that are aging and have seen, probably their ages even pushed further than they were supposed to, which makes those assets more useful for their owners. I want to kind of, from your lens, capture how have you seen the offshore landscape kind of progress over the last decade or two? I'm curious to see what your insight is on that.
Well, sure. Specific to aging assets, we can definitely. I would definitely agree with you that there's been, over the last 10 years, a further and further push to get more return out of the assets that are offshore. Looking at the larger market in the drilling side, there's hundreds and hundreds of drilling vessels that are aging and well over their 20-year design life, and we've done life extension analyses on these, but especially on the production sector. When you look at the offshore production facilities that there are around the world, there's about 230 production facilities out around the world, and 25% of those are over 30 years of age. And one of the roles that ABS has is reevaluating and helping the coastal state and the flag state, as well as on behalf of our within our own interest as class, evaluating the condition of these assets and making sure that they're fit for, they're suitable, they're in a suitable condition to maintain their class notation. And that includes doing a revised analysis of the structure of the machinery, reevaluating the fatigue life that's available for these assets, and making sure that they're operating safely as they age through their later years, and continuing to return on that investment that was made on the capital side for these floating offshore facilities.
And I want to stop at something you said here. I think that's very important. 25% of the world's floating production platforms are 40 years of age. I mean, that tells us a couple of things. One is that our industry has been designing things that are really high tech, and we've been maintaining them real well. But also that there's an investment cycle that's bound to happen at some point.
There definitely is, and that's one of the hardest decisions that needs to be made as an operator of a floating offshore facility. Is what's the cost benefit balance of investing in maintenance and investing in repairs for an aging facility versus when you think it's going to be sent to the scrapyard. But there is a balancing act that class does help contribute to that decision, and helping verify that the analyses and the condition of these assets that support the condition of these assets are done correctly, and that making sure that our role as class is not really getting involved in that cost benefit calculation, but making sure that plan is done safely, and making sure that the operation of that asset is prioritizing the safety of the crew, prioritizing the safety of the asset and its potential impact on the environment.
So what I'm hearing is that you're bringing an unbiased set of skills and expertise to really subjectively, taking out all the ROI calculations out, but really providing an objective opinion on how long the asset's gonna be used safely.
Above all else, one of the most important role that ABS plays as a class society is that we're an unbiased third party.
Yeah.
We're not involved in the financial decisions. We're not involved in the ROI calculation. What we are is a unbiased third party to say yes or no to whether the asset condition is in compliance with the applicable requirements. Yeah.
Matt, we've all lived through a pretty difficult last 12 or 15 months. How have things changed for ABS with the pandemic?
Some things have changed and some things have stayed the same. We're very fortunate in that, we've been really successful in maintaining our day-to-day business. Our surveyors have gone above and beyond, really making sure that they're making the extra effort to support the challenges of, especially the logistical challenges of continuing to do surveys in shipyards and offshore. But as well, we've, from a technology perspective, made a number of advancements a little bit faster than maybe we would have without the pandemic being in place. A great example of that is our capabilities around performing surveys remotely. There are aspects of performing a survey that a surveyor would arrive on board the rig or the FPSO or the ship and witness certain things that today we're able to witness those through remote video, remote photos, remote streaming of aspects of the inspection that can now be performed by the crew. Essentially, we have the capability now that the entire scope of an annual survey can be performed remotely. Whether that's the most efficient way to do something, that depends on the asset, depends on the capabilities of the crew offshore. But we've definitely advanced our ability as a class society to perform remote surveys because of the situation that we're in. It's also helped us as an industry start to adopt new technologies a little bit faster than maybe we would have in the first place. One great example of that is ABS AI tools that we've developed for detection of offshore corrosion. We have an AI tool that can look at images of a tank or of an internal steel structure and identify what percentage of that coating has degraded, what percentage of that tank has visible corrosion, and now we're able to move toward doing some of these inspections without necessarily putting a person in the tank. So we're not there yet, but we're a lot closer than we were at the start of this.
It's amazing how we've been forced to adopt all this technology, but really for our own benefit. And I know, in the directional drilling world, for instance, in well construction, there's lots that shifted to become remote activity and remote real-time operating centers. And what we're seeing really is that we're taking those skill sets that are now perhaps just for offshore to places that are on land as well, and really expanding those skills to other areas, which is fascinating to see. Talking about your digital solutions, can you tell us a little bit more about that? How do those serve life expectancy and health of tanks and equipment out there?
ABS digital solutions are the easiest approach to view it from is our product line called My Digital Fleet, where ABS has a number of different applications that are integrated with each other, whose overall goal and capability is to help visualize the condition of the assets and visualize the risk that that condition of the assets may pose on your operations. So, for example, within My Digital Fleet, there are applications where you can track and visualize asset condition, where you can associate that with your management systems on board and build out your maintenance plans. As well, there's tools that allow you to visualize the risk posed by any areas of non-compliance, or for a trading vessel, the type of vessel and what port it's going into. It will visualize for you the risk that is posed by any areas of non-compliance, subject to the history of things that have been verified in that port by the local port state authorities, and what types of non-compliances they've been writing. But really, what the My Digital Fleet suite of applications does is it gives you a single dashboard that consolidates all of the information that you've got on your operations, your asset condition, your emissions, and gives you a single place where you can visualize and see the condition of your fleet in one place.
And we've seen, to echo on that, we've seen adoption and the need for such solutions to grow over the last year or two, and the willingness to invest in such technologies just because of that remoteness. We call ours Max platform, which we connect the rig equipment, the drilling tools, both downhole, on surface, as well as production, through the life cycle of the well. But really fascinating how the landscape has shifted to become more willing to participate in digital solutions.
Yeah, we see that as well, and that we've been very fortunate that we've had a number of companies that were willing to partner with us during development, and that really has the companies that are willing to work with us and innovate really has made it possible for us to bring a high quality product to the market.
Yeah. For those just joining us, we are meeting with Matt Tremblay with American Bureau of Shipping. Matt, I have a feeling Shelby may have a good question for us from Q&A. I do want to talk to you a little bit more about some of what's going on in the energy transition world. I want to get that question to you. Hey, Shelby.
Hey, Assaad. Yeah, so we actually got a question on LinkedIn, and I sent Assaad a note because I was like, oh, I think this one would be great to ask right now instead of holding it for at the end. So we got a question asking, what do you do in a situation where an asset cannot be utilized safely?
Well, ABS, our role as class is to issue what we call a class certificate that says that the vessel is in compliance with the class requirements. So if there is a situation where we see that there's a condition on board that says that the vessel's not in compliance with those requirements, either the class requirements or statutory requirements, if we're operating on behalf of a flag or coastal state, we would issue that notification to the operator, and we would try to work with them firstly to see if we can bring that issue back into compliance with the requirements. But if not, and if the operator is not willing or capable to make that change to make sure that they're operating the vessel within the scope of the applicable requirements, ABS could suspend our class certificate, and then they would be operating, if they continue to operate, without a valid class certificate on board.
Yeah, it's great insight there. And if something's not safe to operate, I think major interventions required until the certification is obtained, or the asset's probably towards the end of its life. Matt, I want to shift gears towards what's going on offshore in wind energy. We at NOV are proud of something that's been announced in the recent past of designing and providing technology and tools to the first Jones Act compliant vessel to install offshore wind turbines in the U.S. Can you tell me what ABS's role is in that space?
Well, the first U.S. flagged wind turbine installation vessel is currently under construction at Amfels in Brownsville. Will be, and similar to NOV having a role to play, ABS has a role to play as well. We have been selected as the class society for this vessel. So we will be reviewing and approving the design of the wind turbine installation vessel, as well as surveying the vessel while it's being constructed to make sure that it is built in accordance with the applicable requirements. And then once the vessel goes into operations, ABS will maintain its position as the class society, doing annual inspections of the wind turbine installation vessel, the Charybdis. And as it goes through its operations and doing annual surveys, making sure that the maintenance on board is done in a way that keeps the vessel in compliance with the applicable rules.
That's great. Yeah, and it's the first ever Jones Act compliant in the U.S. Going to be built to ABS class. It is for Dominion Energy. It's going to be built by Keppel. Charybdis is the name. You're right. I struggle with the name sometimes, but it helps when somebody says it right. And it is a 144 meter or 472 feet long vessel that is designed to install 12 megawatt or larger turbines, which we know are heading in that direction with bigger and bigger capabilities. What's your outlook for the offshore wind space when it comes to the U.S.? I know the Gulf of Mexico has been a launch pad for a lot of technology. This time's probably we're seeing things repeat from other places around the world.
Yeah, we do see a good amount of activity these days in potential projects starting to warm themselves up toward contracts and new construction. On the wind turbine installation vessel side of things, over the next few years, we do see a market for there being another few Jones Act wind turbine installation vessels, but we see that being limited by the fact that the actual function of installing wind turbines offshore does not require that vessel to be a Jones Act vessel. There is an approach that can be taken where the requirement would be that the vessel that brings the turbine components from the U.S. shore to the offshore installation site would need to be a Jones Act vessel. but there's a potential for the actual installation to occur with foreign flagged vessels. So where we really see there being a market for another 4 to 6 vessels in the next 2 or 3 years is the vessels that are bringing the equipment, the blades, the nacelles, the foundations, bringing those components offshore to potentially a foreign flag wind turbine installation vessel offshore. So we do see there being a potential for another few U.S. flagged wind turbine installation vessels, but we see there being a larger potential for a greater number of what we call SOVs and others purpose-built vessels for bringing these equipment offshore. Now the SOVs, the service offshore, the vessels that are servicing the wind turbine installations once they're installed, we do see a good market for another 8 to 10 to maybe more of these vessels over the next 3 to 5 years being built in the United States.
Yeah, and we sort of have an outlook that with offshore wind becoming more and more acceptable, more investment going into that space, I think we're gonna see more involvement and technology being developed. Matt, it sounds like your role expands from multiple energy pillars and oil and gas and wind being only 2 of them. Do you see bridges or synergies between the 2, and how does that materialize?
Sure. Well, I mean, ABS is the premier class society for the oil and gas industry. We are far and away, we class the largest percentage of the global fleet in the oil and gas sector. And what's definitely shown itself over the last few years is that the lessons learned and the experience we have in oil and gas, translates, a large portion of it translates relatively directly to the offshore renewable energy market. Whether it's the type of floating structures or fixed structures that we're talking about, whether it's the construction methodologies and the rules that we need to have in place to make sure that the renewable sector is operating, built and operating safely. There's a direct correlation with the experience that we have in the oil and gas sector. But as well, there's differences, and that's where ABS has done a great job adapting to the new market, the new renewable sector, and looking at it both from a perspective of the experience we have in oil and gas, but from as well the perspective of it being its own independent market with its own independent challenges.
Matt, can we talk a little bit about how the pandemic's changed how we think about designing vessels? Particularly, what I'm interested in is the personnel on board or POB reduction. What's your perspective on that?
Well, the goal of reducing POB or personnel on board has been there from both before and even more so now during the pandemic. One of the things that you need to think about is what's driving my need for personnel on board? Is it day-to-day operations, or is it unique maintenance requirements, or is it having the people available when something non-standard happens offshore? And what really needs to be thought about today is, how am I designing for a reduced POB? If I'm designing a vessel that needs less people to operate it on a day-to-day basis, does it also need less people to do the maintenance required to keep that vessel operating the way it's supposed to be? If I have less people doing less maintenance offshore, is that going to drive me to a place where 10 years from now I now have greater maintenance requirements and I need to bring in a flotel or temporary housing for people that are needed to do that more long-term maintenance as the vessel has greater maintenance needs as it ages? We are, as an industry, making some great strides in automation and remote controls that do allow us to reduce the amount of people offshore. ABS is working on a number of projects right now, with the end goal being a reduced POB, drilling vessel, reduced POB, FPSO. Will we ever get to zero? It's that goal we're always reaching toward. Will we ever get there? I don't know. But we've definitely got a number of, for example, wellhead platforms offshore that operate without a regular crew. So that gives us the hope and the goal that maybe we can get to a place where we've got floating assets that have significantly reduced manning requirements based on what we're able to automate and control remotely from the shore.
And what are some of the challenges or barriers do you think that are in the way when it comes to implementing more technology or automation or remote ops?
I think it's the things that we don't normally think about. It's the simple maintenance requirements that are one of the greatest challenges. Most of the things that we do on a day-to-day operation when things are running well, these are things that we can automate. But an easy example is air receivers. If you've got a pressure vessel that's holding compressed air, once a day usually there's someone on the maintenance team who goes around and makes sure that there's the condensed water that's drained from that pressure vessel. Is it more efficient and more cost effective to have that person on board doing that maintenance, checking the 50 different air receivers that are on board, that making sure that they're drained correctly every day? Or does it make more sense financially to automate and build in a still to control system on that valve to make sure that it drains every day, to make sure that compressed air system is operating efficiently? So the goals, I think, are more around the simple maintenance tasks that maybe still more efficiently performed by humans than by a complex remote operation system.
I think we're seeing more of the cybersecurity also being a challenge as more data becomes available.
It sure is. Cybersecurity is as we move into a more, I guess I would say, data reliant position as an industry. That data is an asset and a part of your vessel's core capabilities. Yeah. Making sure that data is secure and available when it's needed is just as important as making sure that the steel structure and the systems and machinery on place are available. So that's why ABS has actual class notations, and we have guides on how to maintain the cyber safety of the assets, whether they're assets offshore or how those assets connect to land. And it thinks about it from two perspectives, both from the IT perspective of, protecting yourself from the stereotypical, hacker trying to get on board, but as well as you're protecting yourself from what we call the OT, the operational technology side of cybersecurity, and making sure that you're protecting the way that you work with your digital systems. Are people on your rigs bringing thumb drives from their home and plugging them into your IT infrastructure on board? How are you connecting from your home base of operations to remote systems on the asset? Are you doing that in a way that is secure and safe, mm-hmm. and maintaining the cybersecurity of your offshore asset? So ABS has a guide for cybersecurity like that, no different than we have a guide for maintaining the structural integrity of your offshore asset. It's very important that cybersecurity is looked at with the same criticality as we look at the mechanical security of our assets.
I like the IT and the OT aspect. That's a nicely comprehensive approach to cybersecurity, and it's not a problem until it's a big problem. We may not have seen major issues, but definitely worth protecting against.
Yeah, it's one of those issues where adoption is really driven by what happens. Nobody thinks it's a problem until they see someone else have a real problem with it, and then all of a sudden everybody wants to make sure that they're protected. Yeah. And it's an area that we feel that the offshore and marine industry honestly is a little bit behind some of the other industries in the world, banking, medical, et cetera. Yeah. And I think there really is a step change that needs to occur. And ABS has got both rules and tools, but as well services where we can do an audit of your systems offshore and give you some guidance as to what improvements may be beneficial to your systems, both on land and on the rig.
Matt, I'd like this to keep going. I do have a question for you about deep sea mining, but before we go there, I know we're at the 30-minute mark here, and I want to give some room for our audience to ask their questions. And I know Shelby has some things for us, so let's go there real quick. Hey, hello again, Shelby.
Hey, yeah, I got some really great questions. And this first one comes from Leroy on LinkedIn. And he's wondering, what are some of the most common techniques and tools that ABS uses for conducting remote surveys?
Well, some of the easiest tools are the tools that are available to us, and they've been available to us for ages. And that's just taking some photos and aligning those photos with reports and sending those in for us to look at. As well, we're piloting doing remote surveys through streaming video, which is a great way to perform some of the surveys that need to happen. But it's the challenge tends to be not so much the technology as it is the available bandwidth offshore. But the greatest technology is the one that we've all got in our pocket right now. Is taking photos with the phone in your pocket or the camera we have offshore. But as well, we're also working with a number of different areas in using drones to do remote tank inspection, and as well leveraging the data that the offshore assets are collecting on a day-to-day basis anyway. Through the ABS Decision Support Center, we have the ability to align ABS's survey systems with the data feeds that are on board the rigs, on board the FPSOs, and use that data that's already existing for ABS to verify some of the aspects of the annual survey that we would have been performing in person on board. Does this complete the entire survey remotely? Not necessarily, but it could take a 4-day survey cycle and streamline it and turn it into a 2 or a 1-day survey cycle offshore because of the amount of things that we've been able to verify digitally through photos, through access to record books that are kept digitally on the performance of machinery, for example. And it really moves us in the direction of getting toward a more and more comprehensive remote survey.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. And earlier we were talking about digital tools. So we actually got a question specifically about ABS's Condition Manager for FPSOs. The question is, can you talk a little bit about the functionality of it, but also what future you see it in a post-pandemic world?
Well, Condition Manager is a tool that's part of the My Digital Fleet suite of applications that I mentioned earlier. And what Condition Manager is it's a just that. It's a tool that you use to track and maintain the records of the condition of the asset, be that structural or mechanical, and it helps you track, for example, the gauging or the measurement of the thickness of the hull structure, and visualize that in a way that you can see very readily the condition of the asset and where you have different areas that are in different states of maintenance, whether that's corrosion, whether that's machinery capability. And that Condition Manager tool then integrates with the rest of the My Digital Fleet suite of applications, so that you can align your understanding of the vessel condition with its day-to-day operations, and have a good view that can then drive more efficiently your maintenance scheme and help you prioritize the maintenance that you're performing offshore. But as well, it helps that surveyor visualize where he needs to spend the time in performing his surveys based on having the historical data of what the condition of the asset has been and changing as the condition of the asset changes over time. It helps us focus our areas on where we do our inspections.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. And this last question, it's a little less on the technical side, but it's one that viewers of the show will know I love to ask this question of our guest. It's something we get a lot of people in the comments, and because of course it's LinkedIn, people looking for jobs in oil and gas, maybe people entering the industry for the first time, kind of at that beginning. And so I'm curious, what is your advice for those folks who, maybe are worried or concerned about entering the industry, or what they can best do to position themselves? What advice would you have for them?
I think the number one thing is don't be afraid of joining the oil and gas industry. It's a place where there's always a demand for good talent, and the rumors of the demise of the industry, I think, are greatly exaggerated. There's going to be a lot of business and a lot of need for great people for a very long time, and whether that's working in traditional oil and gas space, whether that's starting to work in the renewable sector. But ABS, like most companies, is always looking for good young talent that we can bring into the industry, and keeping an open mind about the amount of options that the oil and gas industry provides. There's a lot more to oil and gas than just being a hydrocarbons engineer, or being a geologist. Mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, all the traditional classical engineering disciplines are represented in oil and gas, and the oil and gas industry is going to be providing opportunities for new talent to join for years to come. And I myself, I'm trained as a marine engineer. I went to the Massachusetts Maritime Academy, got a training in marine engineering, and then after school ended up working for ABS on the offshore side of the business. And what I can say is that the first few years of my career, I learned more than I would have ever assumed I would have learned just by through osmosis and working in the offshore industry. So I guess my biggest piece of advice is there's going to be some great work for everybody for a long time, and we're still working on projects today that are looking at the next 20 to 30 to 40 years worth of asset life. So lots of good opportunity for a young engineer entering the market these days.
Yeah, very well said, Matt. And I'll echo your words. Sometimes I get asked, is engineering the only background you need to get in oil and gas? Or I think the best background or best major for getting into oil and gas or energy, or how I've started calling it oil and gas and added energies, is problem solving. There's tons of complex world challenges to get affordable energy to consumers, and that's really what we're doing here as a big theme. We've been talking about oil and gas. We've been talking about offshore wind. Matt, I want to kind of take us a bit further into the future, and about a maybe different way of sourcing and exploring energy, and that's subsea or deep sea mining, the technology or the way to harvest polymetallic nodules from the deep ocean on the seabed to harness cobalt, zinc, and manganese as a source for battery technology today, which we're seeing more and more use of. Where is ABS on that, and what's your outlook for that space?
Well, our outlook is that it's definitely a emerging market that we see growing over the next 5 to 10 years. In recognizing that emerging market, ABS is the first class society to publish a guide specific to subsea mining vessels. We've last year published the first guide on the rules for class rules for subsea mining, that addresses both the subsea mining vessel itself and as well the subsea mining systems that are on board the asset, and as well on the seabed floor. We see the market itself growing out of the lessons learned from the oil and gas industry, riser technology, for example. But we definitely see there being a future here. We see it starting slowly, but as that initial adoption occurs, we expect there to be measurable growth, and as the pilot projects that are being initiated today come to fruition.
Yeah, and like you said, I mean, we see lots of parallels and transferable skills from drilling deep sea wells to harvesting these potato-sized nodules from the seabed, and we're excited about that space as well. Matt, this has been a truly exciting conversation. I would like to thank you for being with us today and for sharing your insight on the show.
It's my pleasure. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
And we did as well. I would like to thank our audience for today for joining us with this very interesting and exciting conversation with Matt Tremblay from the American Bureau of Shipping. I would like to ask you to share, comment, and like, and stay with us until next week with more exciting insight to share with you. So I wish you the best, and we'll see you very soon.